November 22, 1963, at approximately 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. In the circumstances and pomp of the following 6 days, television learned of the power of television. It learned how to dramatize events, entice viewers, and how to create a magnet for advertisers. When Kennedy died, so died the integrity of television news, and died in the only way it may die, by its own deeds. Today, we continue to mourn the death of that integrity. Television personalities, including anchors, moderators, interviewers, and commentators, now sit in seats of unbridled power with cameras and microphones. They have no natural enemies, for there is no one with the equivalent power to use the airwaves.
Take it away, Brett.
Thanks, Bill. I'm Brett Baer, live from Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, alongside my co-moderators, Megan Kelly and Chris Wallace. With our partner, Facebook, we welcome you to the Republican primary debate night on Fox, the first debates of the 2016 presidential campaign.
The events that follow, some real and some imagined, are presented in the patriotic hope that future presidential debates, after decades of bombastic buffoonery, achieve a viable legitimacy toward selecting presidential nominees of wisdom, integrity, and character. Due to the critical nature of this presentation, and in the interest of fairness and accuracy, the real events are shown as they happened. The imagined events are shown as what they might have been. What if debaters responded in the same arrogant manner as the moderators asked the questions? What if the debaters acted with the same disdain, snares, and self-importance as is so well practiced by the darlings of media? Stay tuned, and as if by magic, our curmudgeonly ombudsman will step in with the answers.
Gentlemen, we know how much you love hand-raising questions. So we promise this is the only one tonight, the only one. Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump. So, Mr. Trump, to be clear, you're standing on a Republican primary debate.
I fully understand.
The place where the RNC will give the nominee the nod.
I fully understand.
And that experts say an independent run would almost certainly hand the race over to Democrats and likely another Clinton. You can't say tonight that you can make that pledge.
Mr. Baer, the tone of your question is not a question. Buried within it is a declaration that it is a bad thing for a candidate for office to consider running as an independent of one of the two major parties. Furthermore, upon your own initiative, your Fox network and other networks have singled out one candidate, namely Donald Trump, as the one likely to run as an independent. Your declaration smacks of two things. The first is an attempt to discredit Mr. Trump at the start of these debates, and the second is an attempt to create an instant divisiveness amongst the candidates. I might also say that the Fox network is the poster boy for initiating contentious dialogue amongst those who disagree. It is not your job as moderator to take political or philosophical stances. Please ask simple questions unencumbered by speech-making or your own world views, and let those things up to the candidates.
Gentlemen, our first round of questions is on the subject of electability in the general election. And we start tonight with you, Dr. Carson. You are a successful neurosurgeon, but you admit that you have had to study up when it comes to foreign policy, saying there's a lot to learn. Your critics say that your inexperience shows. You suggested that the Baltic states are not a part of NATO, and just months ago you were unfamiliar with the major political parties and government in Israel. And domestically, you thought Alan Greenspan had been Treasury Secretary instead of Federal Reserve Chair. Aren't these basic mistakes? And don't they raise legitimate questions about whether you are ready to be president?
Ms. Kelly, one of the best presidents of the United States in the contentious 20th century just past, was a vice president who had been totally and completely excluded from all knowledge of the workings of the highest level of government by a president who suddenly died in office. The vice president was not even told of the existence of the atom bomb. That vice president, who immediately became president, was Harry S. Truman, and he became a resolute and knowledgeable commander during one of the largest wars in history. He did so because he was a man of principle and character, unswayed by the lure of power, but driven by the higher sense of duty.
Power is what power does. It corrupts. Absolute power has corrupted media absolutely. Personalities have become so rich, so narcissistic, so arrogant, and so abusive of their leverage that they have become embarrassments of which they're not even aware. In the presidential debates, election after election, they have hijacked the very word moderator. They've distorted the function of moderator from that of a mediator to that of a shameless purveyor of their own worldview. They've attempted to skew the results of elections. They've become instigators rather than moderators. They do so by inviting conflict rather than mere disagreement amongst candidates on stage. They've become the WWE wrestlers of professional journalism.
Senator Rubio, when Jeb Bush announced his candidacy for presidency, he said this: "There's no passing off responsibility when you're a governor, no blending into the legislative crowd." Could you please address Governor Bush across the stage here and explain to him why you, someone who has never held executive office, are better prepared to be president than he is, a man who you say did a great job running your state of Florida for 8 years?
Mr. Wallace, true to the lessons you learned from your father, journalist Mike Wallace, one of the first and most contentious of television newsmen, you cannot resist the temptation to start a pissing contest here on stage between two men. If a senator wishes to address a governor, let him do so. If a governor wishes to address a senator, let him do so. But let it be each in his own time and at his own leisure.
Governor Bush, you have insisted that you're your own man. You say you have a life experience uniquely your own, not your father's, not your brother's. But there are several opponents on this stage who get big applause lines in early voting states with this line, quote, "The last thing the country needs is another Bush in the Oval Office." So do you understand the real concern in this country about dynastic politics?
Mr. Bayer, with myriad major problems facing our country and the world, you elect to waste the time of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of interested viewers with the superficialities of a dynastic politics? You ask a question which is not only trivial, it is unanswerable. The minds of voters may consider that issue, and as to whether I can understand their minds is impossible.
Ancient debates flourished in the Academy of Greece, in the Forum in Rome, in the monastery, and in democratic assembly. In those long-ago venues, less than a few thousand people within 100 yards or so of a speaker were able to hear the human voice and understand it. That voice, or any news for that matter, could travel across town or around the world no faster than the speed of the horse. It was a long and arduous task for word to spread. Organized debates, for the most part, had a moderator who acted as a neutral party, the traffic cop of the debate. Sometimes the debaters themselves were the moderators of their own discourtesies. Now, that is not to say that every debate was genteel. Every debate was, however, within earshot or buckshot, or within range of fist or saber or musket. Those tools turned out to be the silent moderators, and both debaters and audience were well aware of them. So, when in debate, human nature did a respectably prudent job of tempering its own propensities toward certain incivilities.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only
has
Rosie
several...
O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account...
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
Ms. Kelly, first off, we've already had a president, Bill Clinton, who thought that way about women, and the mainstream media was pretty much on its knees in approval of his temperament. Of major import is the fact that Hillary Clinton, the wife of that president, defended him in his low regard for women, and she still does, and she also happens to be running for president. Let Hillary Clinton charge that there is a war on women. She was in charge of a war on women her husband violated. Knowing Bill Clinton's proclivities towards forcing women to their knees, we understand how Hillary Clinton got where she is. Is it not curious that both she and you are so sensitive to the mention of that issue? And in further response to your question, where have we come when your media cohorts, academe, and politically correct single-issue activists have wrung the humor out of the fabric of America such that we cannot laugh anymore, cannot appreciate the sting of metaphor, and cannot talk for fear of offending those who do not understand that the offense takes place in the reaction of their own minds and not in the words or actions of others. If you or Hillary Clinton are so easily offended, please avoid the public market.
Senator Cruz, your colleague, Senator Paul, right there next to you, said a few months ago he agrees with you on a number of issues, but he says you do nothing to grow the party. He says you feed red meat to the base, but you don't reach out to minorities. You have a toxic relationship with GOP leaders in Congress. You even called the Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, a liar recently. How can you win in 2016 when you're such a divisive figure?
Mr. Wallace, starting another pissing contest, are we? Is your bag of rhetorical tricks to discredit candidates limited to just that trick?
Alas, in the canyons of Gotham and Atlanta, there arose brand new towers of Babel. The towers of CNN, Fox, NBC, CBS, and ABC. With them, technology broke the hold on speed and civility. To those towers came newsreaders, commentators, interviewers, moderators, and really bad comedians. Plying a hitherto unknown brand of journalism, they became self-absorbed, unrestrained. They became able to promote social political agenda, to self-aggrandize, and to crush critics by the use of unchecked technical power they accumulated. The authority of their cameras, microphones, makeup, accoutrements, and satellites became formidable. Modern moderators, within the safety of their guarded towers of Babel, in front of hand-picked audiences, itch to start fights on stage. Will our curmudgeonly ombudsman point out the hauteur, and yes, even the occasional ignorance of their interrogators?
Governor Christie, you're not exactly the darling of conservatives. You tout your record as a Republican governor in a blue state. On Facebook, the most people talking about you, not surprisingly, come from your state of New Jersey, and one of the top issues they are talking about is the economy. This may be why. Under your watch, New Jersey has undergone 9 credit rating downgrades. The state's 44th in private sector growth. You face an employee pension crisis, and the Garden State has the 3rd highest foreclosure rate in the country. So why should voters believe that your management of the country's finances would be any different?
Mr. Baer, this is not a Fox News show. Your task is not to inflame, but to moderate a discussion amongst equal candidates, keeping it balanced and civil and uninfluenced by you. As a reporter, you were selected this evening to be a moderator only, not a reporter of facts that fit your agenda. I will be happy to respond to any candidate who wishes to examine my character, my actions, or my worthiness to be president, but don't wish to respond to your cadre of fact checkers and designers of elaborate deceptions and gotchas.
Governor Walker, you've consistently said that you want to make abortion illegal, even in cases of rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother. You recently signed an abortion law in Wisconsin that does have an exception for the mother's life, but you are on record as having objected to it. Would you really let a mother die rather than have an abortion? And with 83% of the American public in favor of a life exception, are you two out of the mainstream on this issue to win the general election?
Ms. Kelly, would you prefer to be guided by emotion or pity rather than principle? It would appear that principle is an orphan with you. What you have done here is a favorite Megyn Kelly Fox News trick in order to put me on the spot. Your trick before the public is to capture a major social issue, a huge issue with good men and true on both sides, and you have culled out one and only one of its myriad considerations. With that one tidbit, you wish either for me to resolve the whole abortion issue, or you wish to put me in an untenable position from which I cannot extricate myself. You completely and ignorantly fail to take note of the fact that decisions of this magnitude are reserved to legislatures to decide. Decisions which are always accompanied by discussion and compromise. As president, I may have to accept or veto any bill presented to me, but there will be 535 members of Congress who will ultimately have the greater say in the matter, and not just a single gotcha journalist.
Governor Huckabee, like Governor Walker, you have staked out strong positions on social issues. You favor a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriages. You favor a constitutional amendment banning abortions, except for the life of the mother. Millions of people in this country agree with you, but according to the polls, and again, this is an electability question, according to the polls, more people don't. So how do you persuade enough independents and Democrats to get elected in 2016?
Mr. Wallace, you assume the premise that all independents and Democrats disagree with me. Assume, of course, makes an ass of you and me. Substitute your premise with another one that is verifiable. As president, I would not be dictator and able to enforce my own positions. Rather, the issues, like all other issues, are to be decided by the Congress, the representatives of the people you speak of. My function is only to suggest to Congress and then approve or disapprove Congress's decisions. Even at that, Congress may override me, in which case I, as president, am sworn to carry them out and will do so.
Senator Paul, you recently blamed the rise of ISIS on Republican hawks. Now, you later said that statement, you could have said it better. But the statement went on, and you said, quote, everything in foreign policy, they've been wrong for the last 20 years. Why are you so quick to blame your own party?
Mr. Baer, you expect an answer to that in 1 minute? You moderators allow yourself more time for questions than you allow for answers. What is wrong with this picture? But the fault is not entirely yours, for you are accustomed to the unbridled inebriation of media power. No, the fault lies not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we on this stage and the national parties should allow such a ridiculous format for a discussion.
Governor Kasich, you chose to expand Medicaid in your state, unlike several other governors on this stage tonight, and it is already over budget by some estimates, costing taxpayers an additional $1.4 billion in just the first 18 months. You've defended your Medicaid expansion by invoking God, saying to skeptics that when they arrive in heaven, St. Peter isn't going to ask them how small they've kept government, but what they have done for the poor. Why should Republican voters, who generally want to shrink government, believe that you won't use your St. Peter rationale to expand every government program?
Ms. Kelly, you act as though I, as president, will be able to do anything I wish simply by fiat. I might remind you, in your unbridled position as powerful media journalist, that we have a very good system to handle that very problem. It is the tripartite form of government which demands that such decisions be made by a legislative branch subject to the approval of the executive. It is that system that moderates excesses, such as appeals to religious fervor that you refer to.
Does the reduction of civilized debate from the sublime to the ridiculous all lie in the powerful hands of media? By no means, no. Yet there is nagging suspicion that the debaters are truly unqualified because of their willingness, election after election, to subject themselves to the tricks, the egos, the agenda, the crass manipulations of media. Are the debaters year after year not counseled to be wary? Do they not have the fortitude to call out the manipulators? Have the debaters and interviewees never considered the power they have to collectively eschew the invitations to enter into the lion's den, wherein they are eaten alive because they are untrained to defend themselves? The failure of candidates and political parties to challenge arrogant debate moderators is dispiriting. How can one vote for anyone so easily mishandled by the press? When will all the political parties stop entrapping their candidates in rigged debates? When will the political candidates begin to avoid such entrapments? When will the people recognize the charade?